welcome to Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you don't want the answers to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Before we get to the episode, let's award the much vaunted Expertise is Overrated Tinfoil Award. Now, this week, there's a close call between the Emperor for just being an idiot, not seeing the heresy coming, but we're going to give it to Sean for suggesting that Fulgrim is in fact a painting.
Yeah, I can't believe that I've lost to Mr. I'm a perfect being, let me create 18 alpha males and then nothing will ever go wrong. But hey, there we are. We don't live in a fair world. But yeah, the assertion that Fulgrim turned into a painting. Like, in my defense, I think that is what actually happens, but it's so patently ridiculous that the words came out of my mouth and sort of we're stuck with that as the outcome. No.
Well, equally, insofar as we consider the Emperor being the Tinfoil Award, at least we didn't really come out and say it. You definitely came out and said Fulgrim is a painting, which, although it might still be canon, it might have been retconned, I don't actually know. It's just daft. So
it's
enjoy the hat.
This just seems so unfair. In some exciting news for Expertise is Overrated, though, we've had our first pieces of feedback. So this is feedback on episode 1, which you will remember was our ranking of the top 10 characters in the Dresden Files. We had some great discussion on Reddit, didn't we?
We did indeed. It was actually quite interesting. Not being a very well-versed Redditor myself, it was cool to get some interaction there. Even though our first sort of real comment was patently wrong.
Well, it was pretty fantastic. The first comment was obviously Gary on the Paranet is the most powerful character in the Dresden Files, which we both thought was hilarious. But then
there is an argument to be made there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But then Moses the Red came in with a list of 10 characters, which one completely broke all the rules I at least had set for my list, and I think you had basically set for your list as well, which was quite fun.
Yeah,
but
which was
two,
don't put people that are more or less interchangeable in different slots.
Oh no, that wasn't my one. That was going to be my next complaint with his list. No, my one was don't put people that haven't appeared in the text yet on the list. So putting the White God at 1, I mean, 1, easy way out, mate. Nice difficult one you've given yourself there. But also, we haven't met the White God, and you could have just put Odin at the top for all you know.
This is the thing, because if you're going to talk about the White God, as only been mentioned in passing, we have absolutely no frame of reference for any other major deity that might be found on Earth.
No, exactly.
I saw an interesting thread recently about the Hindu gods who would have a bit of a say on things in the Dresden universe. So no, it was cheating. Blatantly wrong, that list.
But thank you for your interaction. Rubbish comments.
Try again next time.
The other interesting question that I think we had was from Ellie, one of our early adopters, who asked where Shagnasty, the skinwalker, was. And I have to say, having gone back and reread the opening parts of Turncoat, maybe the skinwalker doesn't make it to the top 10 list, but damn, it's close.
He's strong. He's strong, but I think, if I remember right, your argument against Alfred, for example, was that he's very situational. I think Shagnasty is the same, right? If he's in a fight with you, yeah, you'll struggle, but that's about it, really.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was the sort of the build-up around him. So you've got the chase scene through Chicago where Dresden knows he's being followed but can't quite work out why. Keeps trying to lose the tail, and it just sort of builds the dread. And then he works out what it is, and then he realized that the fact that he was getting more scared was making it more powerful. And then he talks about how no one will talk to you about a skinwalker because of how horrible and sort of naturally evil they are. And then he talks to Morgan, and Morgan talks about the fact that he had to nuke one to kill it and might not have even killed it, and they feed on magic and all of that. I don't know. I think Ellie's point, and it was quite well made, was not necessarily that it's the most powerful, but it's one of the creepiest things we've seen, and I think I'd definitely give it that. But yeah, it doesn't make the list. Bad comment. Ellie should be ashamed of herself.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that Shag Nasty gets, well, not quite taken down, but doesn't win against a bunch of wizards, and we decided that wizards are terrible, so
It's true.
all
It's
around
true.
dreadful comment. But thanks for making it.
Yeah, keep the feedback coming. Yeah, we've
One day maybe someone will prove us wrong, but I feel it's unlikely.
I just don't think that's possible.
Neither do I, actually. Right, shall we get to the actual matter at hand?
Talking about it being impossible to prove us wrong, watch us do it ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely.
As promised, this week we're discussing who is the one true hero of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, made famous by, among other things, the HBO TV show Game of Thrones, which ended perfectly. We shall say no more on season 8 in this episode.
I was about to say famous is not the right word, infamous more. Like. But then I remembered, yes, season 8 was great. Yeah.
Season 8 is flawless, and I will fight anyone who thinks otherwise. No, not flawless, but
foreshadowing.
Right, so there are obviously a whole number of characters that we could use to discuss this, but I thought an interesting question that I wanted to ask you before we got started was, does the hero of A Song of Ice and Fire, and more broadly of media in general, need to be a point of view character? Do we need to be inside their head?
Well, I think that's a key question, especially in works written like this, right? Because it's kind of unusual, in my opinion, to have these massive epic sagas that are told from different characters' point of views in quite the same way as it is here.
Yeah.
Especially because some of them you would look at, I think I can sort of know where you're going with this, that you would look at them and go, I don't think that that's the main character of this particular story arc. They're just the person that we're riding along with.
Well, I think the core one here is Robb Stark and his mother, Catelyn. I think you could make quite a strong case, and I will do, that Robb Stark is the hero of A Clash of Kings. No, he's not the hero of the whole series, because he dies halfway through, spoilers, and he dies badly. But we're never inside his head. We see his victories, his losses, his triumphs, his failures, his grief, his joy, through the eyes of his mother.
Yes, quite. I mean, first of all, I guess dying in The Song of Ice and Fire is not necessarily the end all. Perhaps.
I think we can safely say Robb isn't coming back.
I think he's pretty dead. Well, I mean, they put his wolf's head on him, didn't they? So who knows? He might come back as something even more insane. But Robb's an interesting because you're quite right. He is ostensibly the hero in Clash of Kings. But I think the reason that it's Catelyn's point of view is because she links the North and the South, and in fact the Vale, right? She's travelled all the way back, which I think makes sense in that respect. It links the story up a bit nicer.
Sure.
But does that make Catelyn one of the heroes?
No. I don't think being a point of view character is sufficient to be in consideration for being a hero. I don't think it's necessary. I just think it's an interesting method of structuring. Because the other obvious example is fan favorite Stannis Baratheon.
Stannis the Manus, yes indeed.
Stannis the incel. Sorry, that's foreshadowing for later in this episode. I do not like Stannis Baratheon, and I think he is a villain, not a hero. But
he's the hero that was promised.
Shut up. I just don't know whether he looms over a Game of Thrones. He's prominent as an antagonist, really, in Clash of Kings. And then he probably is one of the star hero characters of Storm of Swords. So,
and not to, the fact of the matter is that Ned has more or less proven that he is in fact the heir to the Seven Kingdoms and the Iron Throne. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that king equals hero,
no.
but it's a pretty big deal, and I think he should be respected accordingly. I think there's a case to be made that Stannis, say that the whole story ends with him on the Iron Throne and everyone else who was a point of view character or anyone else in the books being dead or irrelevant. Good on Stannis.
Okay.
If you can ever pay back the Iron Bank, that is.
No, I think that's fair. I think that probably does mean that you don't need to be a point of view character to be the hero, right?
Absolutely. I don't.
If we think that, okay, cool. No, I just wanted to sort of frame the boundaries of the discussion. That was all.
I mean, to not even get into the whole discussion of what being a hero actually is, but
no, we're going to ignore that because there's a whole bunch of narrative theory that one of us needs to pretend to read before we can answer that question.
You haven't read it yet?
No, I was busy rereading a Game of Thrones, mate.
That's fair enough. Maybe I should have done that. But I think early on, especially in the books, you sort of think heroic characters or characters of great importance. Perhaps Drogo, Khal Drogo. Never a point of view character. I don't remember him being one anyway.
No, he's not.
Wouldn't have been in English, so that would have been a great chapter. That
would have been so good. Can you imagine?
It's a Dothraki chapter in there.
Just a chapter completely in Dothraki. No. Well, to get to it, I vaguely pulled together a list of people that I thought could be the hero. Now, obviously, feel free to add to this, but I thought that might be a useful way to...
Yeah, I just want to kind of maybe get into your head here. It's a scary place.
Don't worry, there's lots of room.
I figured. But I just wanted to maybe know from you, as in what were your criteria for this sort of list? Like, what did you think?
Okay, so
would classify someone as the hero of the saga. This bit.
So there are some people who are on this list to discount. Right, so Stannis Baratheon is on this list, even though I don't think he's the hero, because I think if you don't talk about him, he's the notable absence. But that's why he's on there. But I thought they had to be a protagonist of their own arc. I thought that they had to be a person, not only a protagonist of their own arc, but a person about whom other characters in the story turn. So that's why sort of Brienne of Tarth doesn't make it on my list, even though she's probably morally the best character in the books. She doesn't make the list because her character arc, so far as we've seen it, I would argue, is pretty reactive to other characters.
So far as we've seen it, which will be an interesting point.
Sure. And we are a little bit trying to guess the end game here as well, because it's not just the hero of the published books. We're trying to work out who the overall hero is, having not read The Winds of Winter or A Dream of Spring, and probably never going to.
Oof, don't say that.
I love being proved wrong, so prove me wrong, George. But no, I just sort of started writing names down. So I've got as possible contenders, not necessarily ones that I think could be a contender. I've got Ned Stark, Robert Baratheon,
Daft.
Stannis Baratheon.
I'll take that.
Robb Stark.
Kind of daft because he's dead.
Aegon Targaryen Blackfire, whoever he might be.
Not an actual character, but okay.
Arya and Sansa and Jon.
Yeah, we can talk about them.
Dany and Bran. Those are my.
We can talk about Dany. I'm not sure why Bran's on the list. But go on.
Those I'd say were mine. And you've added a few to that list.
Well, you've missed the most obvious and
Yes,
a
I
fan
did.
favourite, especially after the TV show.
I'll concede that you wrote this character down, and I went shit. Yes.
I mean, yes. How did you not include Samwell Tarly? No, I do think Sam should be considered, but the character that you missed off your list is Tyrion Lannister, and it's frankly unforgivable.
Yes, no, that's fair.
I mean, he, by some definitions and metrics, is arguably the main character of the story. You know, like my figures, he's got more point of view chapters than anyone else.
Okay.
So it's hard to say that he's not.
It's an argument.
And the entire storyline in Essos is going to revolve around him and Dany soon enough. So I think he's definitely in with a shot. Let's park Tyrion for now.
Okay.
Not to mention, I guess, Tywin, but he also doesn't meet the still alive criteria.
Yeah, I mean, Ned and Robert definitely aren't the heroes, but I wanted to talk about Ned in particular anyway.
Yeah, which is absolutely fair.
Tywin didn't make the list because he's a filthy war criminal.
No, because Robert isn't. Only because he won the war.
I think Robert has a pretty bad shout at being the hero of even his own story.
It also means that you're not including Jaime in your list of heroes. Or do you not think he's a war criminal?
I think Jaime is Jaime a war. He's a criminal.
Yeah, I suppose the war part is debatable, but he's just a flat out murderer.
Yes. Okay, and I guess the last person on this list is Davos Seaworth.
Davos Seaworth, yeah. If for no other reason than I really like him as a character.
That's my Hades argument from episode 1. You can't steal that.
I mean,
I really like him, but he's not relevant.
Well, Hades, as I've said once before now, by far the best Greek god there is. Yeah, no, I think Davos is cool, and you know, we've mentioned Stannis. He's the only point of view we get really of Stannis. So I think
we get Catelyn's point of view of Stannis, and actually, it's quite interesting as a contrast.
We do. I mean, from both of those, I think I'm really happy that we don't actually get Stannis' own point of view. Because
I think Stannis' point of view would be fascinating.
Yeah, but in a oh my god, this is a psychopath.
Do you think? Kind of I don't know. See, right. I didn't want to go to Stannis first. I wanted to talk about Ned.
I know he gets much maligned in the TV show and whatnot.
There's a few things at play. I think one, yes, the TV show didn't understand Stannis and told Stephen Delane to play him as a villain when he's not a villain. I don't think, although he has villainous aspects to him. I think that Stannis' problem in the context of the story as a whole is that he has fucking terrible PR. Right?
Are you saying the Lord of Light does not have good PR people?
No, I'm saying Stannis specifically has bad PR. Right?
Well, I mean, it's not unreasonable though, is it? Because he's the eldest brother of the guy who's king. And the guy who's king has got many sons. So it's like, you know, why does he need a good PR partner? He can just do his own thing. Living sort of in the knowledge he'd probably never have to be on the throne.
Yeah, but
until Ned comes in and ruins all of that.
Damn it, Ned. But his whole shtick is about the fact that no one ever loved him as a child. He doesn't understand like laughter or anything like that. I don't know. I think he's a terrifying character. I think Varys is, you know, there's no creature more terrifying than a truly just man. I think that's correctly applied to Stannis. Catelyn says in talking about him that he's notoriously without mercy. So I do think, but I think the problem is all of these things could be assets. Being a truly just man could be an asset. Being the elder
It was
brother or
a
the
real
middle,
asset to Ned, wasn't it?
no, but it is right. I'm coming back to that, but it is. Being the middle brother of Robert, who created this sort of chivalric ideal. Robert is essentially Robin Hood of Westeros, ish. In like leading his rebellion, there's all this mythology built up around Robert. Stannis holds Storm's End through the entirety of Robert's rebellion. As a child,
Sorry, can we just go back to you saying that Robert is the Robin Hood?
okay, I was really struggling for maybe he's
Oh
maybe
yes,
he's
this lord of one of the
maybe
most
he's Robert the
prestigious
Bruce.
castles.
Maybe he's Robert the Bruce. He fights an insurgency and wins against a tyrant. Right, Robert understood PR. Renly understands PR. Right, Renly grabs all of the mystique, all of the mythology that was built up about Robert's rebellion, and turns that into his claim to power. I am Robert Reborn. That is Renly's claim to power. That and I've got a massive fucking army behind me. Get out of my way.
Yeah. With some of the best knights in all of Westeros.
Exactly. But Stannis does none of this. Stannis sits there on Dragonstone and grinds his teeth and complains that he didn't get what he was due. Right? That's his problem. And that's also why he's not the hero.
Yeah, fair.
But being a truly just man, I think, is Ned Stark's greatest asset. And the reason that I think that is you look at what happens to their families after they die, and his lands and his title and all of that after he dies, and you contrast him with Tywin Lannister. Right? What happens to the Westerlands and the Lannister family after Tywin dies? That it descends into anarchy. Basically,
It is an absolute shambles. Yeah,
it's an absolute shambles. It completely dissolves. There's no personal loyalty from any of Tywin's vassals to him. It's or to his ideal is a better way of putting it. It's all their loyalty is all derived from their fear of Tywin.
Is that entirely fair though? Because it'll always take a little while for things to even out. And I mean, the North wasn't exactly, Ned dies and everything's sunny.
No, that's
particularly
absolutely
once Rob died.
That's absolutely true. Except look at what's happening now. The Mountain Clans are marching with Stannis to free fake Arya from the Boltons because she's Ned Stark's little girl.
Yeah.
Ned inspired phenomenal personal loyalty because he was a good man and a just man.
The Mountain Clans are a really great argument because they made a very big deal of the fact that it's for the Ned, right?
It's save the Ned's little girl, and Ned went to them. He sat by their fires. He drank their beer. All of that. He treated them as equals.
The Starks were betrayed by one of their vassals, whereas the Lannisters weren't. So
no, that's very true. That is very, very true. But that's it's a harsh.
I think it brings us to an interesting point. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever going to argue that Tywin's the hero of the story, much like another main character that we've omitted from this list, who I think will probably be rather more in villain territory rather than hero. But if it's not Ned, it's not necessarily Rob, but we've also got Arya, Sansa, Jon, and Bran on this list. I don't know why Bran's on this, but there we are. Is there a case to be made that it's the Starks? They're the heroes of the Song of Ice and Fire.
As an institution,
as a unit, yeah. It's essentially a story about a family told from multiple different points of view, virtually all of whom interact with a Stark at some point. I mean, so far the only one who hasn't, I suppose, is Dany.
But even she thinks about them.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck,
and
that's a really good point.
Everyone else, interact at some point with a Stark. I think it's we'll get to it, but I'll make a case for one Stark in particular. I think who's probably the most influential, But if we're gonna say who's the hero of A Song of Ice and Fire, I think it was the Stark family.
That's a really good point.
You're welcome.
No, not that the hero of A Song of Ice and Fire is the Stark family. That's simplistic and idiotic. But
Occam's razor, we call that in the biz.
But A Song of Ice and Fire is fundamentally a story about family and families told from multiple perspectives and contrasting different ways of doing family. And actually, it's not necessarily a thesis on political power, although it sort of is. But more than that, it's a theory on how to be a good family.
Yes, exactly. It's what episode 2 of Star Wars could have been.
Wow!
But they really went for the thesis on politics there. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Song of Ice and Fire is literally, it's a song, right? And you sing songs about the great houses and great families and great deeds done. And I think it's the one that has overlap with every single character that we see in the series. Excluding some of the prologue and epilogue. And actually, even in some of the epilogues, there are Stark family members involved. So there you have it. Episode's over.
Done. Finished it. 25 minutes.
And you had all of this stuff lined up.
I had it all lined up. I was going to build you up on Jon and then smash you down on Jon. I was going to get angry about Sansa. No, I'm done. No, clearly not. Clearly not.
You can get angry about Sansa in a minute when I get to it.
That's.
That
would have been a much better point to make in about 20 minutes' time. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, it's the TLDR of this episode.
Halfway in.
No, because it doesn't actually answer our question, right? I guess what I've done here is narrow it down and gone for the soft option of saying it's a family.
It is a family. Okay, so based on that discussion, I think we can probably discount Ned because he's done great things. He looks like he's going to be the hero of the story if you're not paying close attention in Game of Thrones, and then he gets his head chopped off at the end of Game of Thrones.
But I think that exactly makes him one of the heroes.
No, I think
he's set up to fall.
I think that's right. I think that's right, but I don't think he's the hero.
No,
right. I think that's the distinction.
He does. I don't want to call them emotions because I'm not too familiar with the concept, but when I read A Game of Thrones, I was rooting for Ned, and then was shocked to see the end result. And then when I watched the TV show, I went through exactly the same.
I did it the other way around.
In the Red Wedding, so
I did it the other way around. I watched the first couple of episodes of Game of Thrones, and then read the book before episode 8, Baelor, so I knew what was happening, and I still got to that episode, and Ned's on the set stairs, and I was like, yeah, but he's going to get away, right? He's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
Exactly.
It's phenomenally well done, and Sean Bean gives a magnificent performance.
Absolutely.
To be fair, casting of the
actor,
the casting of Game of Thrones was quite good.
Oh, incredible! I mean, the whole TV show was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And let's move
Flawless.
on from that. No, but like I said, I had exactly the same rollercoaster emotions with the Red Wedding.
And the best thing about the Red Wedding
goes, you're like, the next best thing, from what we can tell, is Rob, right? He's to emulate his father in so many ways. He's up and winning, he's the underdog, but he still managed to smash the Lannisters. And then,
he wins all his wars. He defeats Jaime Lannister in battle. He gives Tywin the runaround.
Crowned King in the North by his bannermen.
Crowned King in the North. Well, that's a political power play by the great Jon. But you're still right? Other people go along with it.
The great Jon, definitely also a hero.
Yeah, he's definitely a lowercase hero. What an absolute legend.
I think he's going to come back and make the Lannisters pay for what they've done.
Well, he's in captivity, isn't he?
Is he, or did he get away? I always forget.
No, he's He's in captivity at the
He killed a bunch of people, right, at the Red
yeah.
Wedding, and then I think you're right. They sort of drag him away.
He's in chains at the Twins.
Do we know that though?
Yes, it's said in A Dance with Dragons. Barbary Dustin says to one of the Freys, if you didn't hold the Great John captive, either Horsebane or Crowfoot, I can't remember which one is with the Freys, would eat your entrails.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, he's ready to strike.
Exactly. He's great. But no, it's definitely not Ned, because while his impact is felt throughout the story, he's not present in enough of the story, I think.
He's in our hearts throughout.
He's in our hearts throughout, and we will carry that torch for the rest of our lives. Robert is the other person from that generation that it could be, but I'm only bringing him up to say it's clearly not Robert. Robert is a terrible, terrible man who happens to be king.
If we ever do a villains episode, I think you could include him in that list as well.
I think that's, yeah.
Not because he's an inherently evil man or whatever, but
I don't know.
I mean, he goes to war for all the wrong reasons, and then is an absolutely atrocious king.
And a terrible husband.
He doesn't do very well, does he?
No. Although he goes to war for the right reasons.
Is that the reason to make sure that thousands of people die? It's because you're in love with a woman?
Oh my god, we are doing an episode on Robert Baratheon and his casus belli against the Mad King, because it's not that Rhaegar and Lyanna eloped. My fucking god.
I mean, it 100% is.
No, it's not. Aerys Targaryen literally calls for his execution, and Jon Arryn raises his banners in rebellion. Jon Arryn is the source of the rebellion. It's not Robert.
Oh my god, you are so unbelievably misinformed. But let's not get sidetracked. I'll tell you off for being an idiot in that episode.
Sorry, I've just been driving my fingers into my eyes so I can't read what I've got written here. I'm so angry. You can't tell because I'm also tired, but my god, you've bought the show's narrative and it's wrong and it's bad and you should feel ashamed of yourself. Moving on.
But the show's great.
Bugger. The show is great and flawless, but there is a single line out of place.
There's one slight detail.
Yes. Anyway. Other people that we can discount quickly then. Stannis, villain, not a hero, bad person, being framed to do atrocious things, massive hypocrite. Who else can we discount quickly? Aegon, the ultimate fake out.
Well, even if he turns out to be real and whatnot, he just shows up too late, doesn't he?
He shows up too late.
You don't see anything of him, really.
No, so he's a perfect example of show don't tell being used to support the fact that he's fake. Because if Aegon were the hero of the story, we'd have been with him since Game of Thrones. And he's not, and we only know he's special because Varys tells us he's special while trying to convince Kavan that he's special. That's it.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
He's the Mummer's dragon from the House of the Undying. He's a Blackfire, and he's going to die atrociously in Dragonfire, and it's going to be excellent.
Yeah, and I feel George R.R. Martin would have done it differently, right? He probably would have done a John the Fiddler type play, as in have Aegon sort of around.
He'd have been around. We'd have heard of him.
Griff as a character doing something.
Yeah.
But
Jon Con appears out of nowhere in Dance with Dragons. Yeah.
I think he is fake. I think his purpose will be to deliver Blackfire to its rightful owners, the Targaryens, and finally put rest to this absolute nonsense that was the Blackfire Rebellion.
And he's also probably going to get the welcome to Westeros that Dany wants and isn't going to get.
Now that's interesting. Well, I mean, he's already in Westeros.
Well, yeah, but he's taken castles in the Stormlands. He's going to arrive in. My guess is he's going to arrive in King's Landing and take King's Landing from Cersei, and that's where Cersei will die because she won't be an endgame villain.
Now there's a bold claim.
I just don't think that she will. I don't think the Lannister conflict is endgame relevant.
Yeah, but then we're entering heroes versus heroes territory, aren't we?
Exactly,
Realistically.
we are, and it brings us, I guess, having discounted Aegon, to our sort of, or as someone called him recently, which I really really enjoy, young Grift.
Young Grift.
Uh-huh. As in grifting, as in a scheme. I just thought it was excellent.
That's terrible. But go on.
No, it's just I don't think he's the hero. I think it's really obvious that he's not, and I think he's being set up to be the reason that Westeros doesn't get, or King's Landing at least doesn't get a happy ending. So where do you want to go next? We've thrown the low hanging fruit away.
Yeah, so I think we've narrowed it down to Arya, Sansa, Jon, Bran in terms of the Starks.
Yeah. So all of the Starks that are still alive and not infants.
Yeah. So I guess just to yeah, that's a fair point actually, because we're discounting Rickon at the moment, aren't we?
But yeah, he's a baby.
He might be the one who leads the forces of Winter through the wall just to smash everyone and secure the North. Who knows? It seems unlikely though. But I think we should wrap up perhaps the Lannisters, because there's two names that we've mentioned. Well, you've mentioned Cersei, but I think we can all quite say she's not the hero of the piece.
Yes, if you're listening to this and you think Cersei Lannister is a hero, then help.
Please comment, and we'll tell you.
Also, yeah, leave a comment telling us why, but then please get help.
And then in excruciating detail, we will give you the help you need. But I guess the obvious one is Tyrion. But let's park him because I feel he's more relevant with Dany and all that.
Yeah.
Jaime Lannister, he gets a not unreasonable number of POVs, more than Ned. Only two more, but still.
He does. I didn't realize that. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I hadn't realized it either. And this is where the TV show is confused me a little, because I having not read the books in detail for quite a while, ever, of course. I'm just making this up as I go along. But this is the line of where the books got to and what doesn't actually happen in the books gets a bit blurred. But I seem to recall Jaime being upset with Cersei.
Yes.
And then that's when he goes to the Riverlands.
He's upset with Cersei. He goes to the Riverlands. Cersei sends him a request for help.
Yeah,
lots of stuff happens, and then Cersei sends him a letter begging for help and to appear as her champion in a trial by combat, which he burns.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is where Jaime, I think, is possibly in with a shout, because it would be probably the most obvious redemption story, right? He starts off as an absolute prick.
I don't think. Yes, you're right. A redemption. I have a few issues with this. One, Jaime Lannister threw a child out of a window and murdered his own family members.
You need to do something in order to be able to redeem yourself, don't you?
You need to do something in order to be able to redeem yourself.
Ned Stark is never going to redeem himself because he's never done anything wrong.
No, Ned Stark is dealing with other demons, but my point
Except
is...
to have a bastard son, of
course. Wow. My point is, with Jaime, there are some things you don't get redemption for. You can be on a redemption arc and end up as less of a shitty human being than you were at the start of Game of Thrones, right? But Jaime Lannister is never going to be able to take the stain off his soul that was murdering Cleos Frey, his relative, and throwing Brandon Stark out of a window when he was aged 7.
But that's for the gods to decide.
No, I'm fairly sure
he's trying.
And his effort is laudable, and he's a better man. He's objectively a better man now than he was in a Game of Thrones or even Clash of Kings.
And importantly, another man with a great sense of family. He's more or less the only one in his family who cares about his brother.
He's the only one in his family.
He cares so much about his sister that it's got a bit weird.
He's the only one who cares about Tyrion. I don't know. I think I have a personal issue with the redemption of Jaime Lannister as being a complete arc. He's on a redemption trajectory, and I think that's right. But he does also threaten to trebuchet or a newborn baby into Riverrun if they don't surrender
Yes.
Riverrun, while he's on his redemption arc, right?
That's true. That is very true. I mean, he's still a very pragmatic warrior.
Yeah, I like Jamie as a character. I think like his point of view chapters are incredibly fun,
Yes.
but I don't know. I get uncomfortable when I see, especially on Reddit, people suggesting that he's become a good man or something. He may well he may well have become a better man, but as Stannis Baratheon, whom I don't like, says, one good act doesn't wash out the bad, nor does
Oh, absolutely.
the bad wash out the good. But Jaime Lannister is the sum of all of those parts, and one of those parts was throwing Bran Stark out of a window.
Absolutely. But I think Jamie is the sort of character who he does these things, yes, but I think he does live with that for the rest of his life, and I think how that will eventually culminate, because as you say, he's still doing absolutely terrible things or suggesting absolutely terrible things. So he's quite clearly a very flawed person.
His campaign in the Riverlands serves to perpetuate an illegitimate and tyrannical rule.
Yeah, for sure.
He knows that.
And for it's his duty. Because his actions aren't always that easily explained. I mean, killing the king, for example, good or bad, you decide, I suppose. But I essentially see, I don't think Jamie is the hero, but I see him having a really interesting arc, and as you say, really fun POV chapters. And he's probably eventually going to die in some quite heroic way, where people will be torn, as in people who are his enemies will be torn as to remembering him.
I think that's
the bad guy he was, or the good guy he was.
I think that's true. I think that is definitely true. He's also deviating slightly. He's also so much a victim of his own hubris. If he'd just told Ned when Ned comes riding into the throne room and finds Jaime sitting on the throne, I killed the Mad King. Sorry, that was bad of me. But did you know he was going to blow up the entire city and kill millions of people?
Yeah.
That's why I killed him. But he doesn't, because he decides that Ned wouldn't understand. But it's not just
pride
about
coming
Ned.
before a fall, doesn't it?
Well, exactly.
Yeah, and of all the people you want walking through those doors at that point in time, I think Ned Stark is the last on your list.
You're absolutely right. Had it been Robert, for example, rather than Ned, that walks through those doors,
you'd have made him a king.
The story of Jaime Lannister becomes so different.
Indeed.
Anyway.
Indeed.
We're yet to find a hero. We've been going for a long time.
We need to find a hero. Yeah, I mean, we are getting to a long old episode here. But I mean, it's a Song of Ice and Fire. It is an epic for a reason. So Jaime's out. What about Tyrion? Tyrion Targaryen.
Tyrion the time traveling fetus. You know
that. Purple eyes and silvery hair.
He doesn't have purple eyes.
He's got Dragon Rider.
Shut up. Let me think this through. Is Tyrion?
Shut up and let me talk.
Essentially, no, please shut up and let me think. It's not even talking at this stage. If you'd asked me, if I'd only read up to Clash of Kings, if you'd asked me, I would have said that Tyrion was in with a shout with being the overall hero of A Song of Ice and Fire. But I think you have to look at his actions in Feast and Dance, I think it is, after he kills... No, not Feast, he's not in Feast, sorry, just Dance. After he kills Tywin. And his behaviour on the road in Essos, his treatment of Penny, the other dwarf that he meets. And I think when you start to see him on that sort of incredibly self-destructive and incredibly violent arc, you start to see the seeds of that being sown in Game of Thrones and Clash of Kings.
I've no follow-up to that. You've departed reason and rationale there, I think.
Okay, all right. Make your case then before I show he's not the hero. Make the case that he is. That's definitely us going the wrong way.
He's got more POV chapters than anyone else.
Okay,
That's literally it.
that's it. Is it?
That's it.
Fucking hell.
Well, I mean, he kills the villain. He's the one who finally, I think anyway, will draw an end to this ridiculous storyline in Essos.
That's true.
It's got a bit tiring, and I think he's going to drag Daenerys back to Westeros, and then whatever happens, happens.
That will be a heroic endeavor.
Exactly. I mean, he's the hero to just get us out of Essos and into the civilized world, you know?
Cutting that Gordian knot. Absolutely. Sign me up. I think the reason that he's got the most chapters is that George R.R. Martin has said that he's the most fun to write.
Yeah, I was just about to say he is very fun, isn't he?
And you can see the fun in his chapters, and I enjoy reading Tyrion chapters. But as I say, if you start to look at his actions, so he arms the mountain clans in the Mountains of the Moon in the Vale for no reason other, really, than he feels slighted by Lysa Arryn, and that action is going to have tremendous repercussions onto the small folk of the Vale. That's not Lysa's not going to suffer
small
because
folk?
of that.
Oh, come on now. Are we really going to talk about the small folk?
Yeah, because I think you have to look at.
Cares.
Oh, fair enough. If you're going to write off 80% of the population as being unimportant, I'm not sure where we can go from here. Except no, I know exactly where we can go from here, and I'm going to bypass John and Danny entirely and talk about the real hero of A Song of Ice and Fire, Bran Stark.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, it's good that you said it that way, because it shows that you genuinely think that John or Danny are the heroes. Which is still wrong, but I think you're closer to the truth than that.
I just think that the case for Bran Stark being the hero is so compelling, we don't need to talk about that.
Okay. I know you've been waiting to say this for so long, and it's going to be crap, and I'm going to hate you for it. But right. I guess that's why I'm here.
Just to be angry. This is going to be excellent. Right. So, Bran Stark is our first point of view in A Song of Ice and Fire, other than someone who dies in the prologue. It's through Bran Stark's eyes that we see.
So he's not the first.
Bran Stark is our first living point of view. the prologue characters don't count.
Oh, okay, sure. Sorry, I forgot about that.
So if you're allowed to say the small folk don't count, I'm allowed to say that.
Okay, I'll give you that.
It's through his eyes that we see the best, I'm going to say, forms of leadership that we see in A Song of Ice and Fire. It is through his eyes.
What do you mean by that?
His treatment of people lesser than himself at the Harvest Feast in Clash of Kings in particular, but more generally the behaviour of large folk, nobles and small folk at Winterfell in particular.
Large folk?
Yeah, small folk and whatever the other lot are called. So you see it at the Harvest Feast, right? He sends choice cuts of meat to Hodor and Old Nan, not because it's necessary as it is when he does it with the Walder's Frey or anything like that, but because he wants to. Not only that,
well, there's some foreshadowing there.
Not only that, but Bran Stark is the most obvious melding of the magical and political plot lines that for most of the first half of A Song of Ice and Fire are diametrically separated. Right, so you have characters who are intensely steeped in the magical. So Danny is the obvious example there, and then characters who are intensely steeped in the political, like Ned or Rob. Right, and
Yeah,
Bran
but you got
is the
Stannis
character.
in there who marries both, probably more so than Bran,
Does he though?
right? Because
I don't.
he's the whole, well,
Well,
Renly
no,
aside, but I guess, but Stannis is one of the first to declare war. He's the rightful heir. Like, that is politics 101, and he lives that.
sure,
But then he gets the Red Woman from Asai or Ashai,
yeah,
or however you say it,
but I don't
and it
think.
becomes magic galore.
But I don't think that Stannis buys into the magic in the same. He's a reluctant.
Ooh, now that's interesting. That's interesting.
Right, so
That's the
he's
scope of this one, but we should get back to that at some point.
no, absolutely. But he's a reluctant participant in religion. You see that in the burning of the Seven on Dragonstone that opens the prologue to Clash of Kings. Davos won in A Clash of Kings, the first real chapter, and Stannis stands there watching it and sort of participating only as far as he really needs to. I don't think he embraces the magical side of his storyline, possibly
No,
ever.
no, but we don't really know if Bran will either. I mean, he talk about being forced into something.
But Bran,
I mean, this is a
Bran
little boy who
wargs.
saw himself as a knight, and now here he is having to
Sure.
see and hear and literally everything. I get what you're saying. He's a nice marriage of the two sort of components.
He's also steeped in symbolism. So are other characters, particularly Danny, but more so than anyone else, Bran sort of embodies several classic Arthurian archetypes, particularly that of the Fisher King. There was no way you were stopping me getting that in there, but he does. He really does.
Yeah, but
he really does.
That's like me saying that Samuel Tarly's a hero because he's obviously Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings.
No,
which is a stronger argument. I'm not going to lie.
He's really not. he's really not Samwise Gamgee more than anything else. If you said that Samuel Tarly
the
was
only fat one that we put on the list.
If you said that Samuel Tarly was the hero because he's our perspective and he embodies sort of our need to come to terms with our own fears so as to progress as human beings, then you'd have a case. But you didn't. You just said something stupid.
Oh, yeah, okay, Brandon Stark. See, Bran, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier that you think Fagon is going to take King's Landing, because that's the only way for Bran the hero to work.
No, it's not.
It is.
Why does Bran need to take King's Landing? Danny's going to burn it to the ground.
Because he doesn't need to take King's Landing, but the whole... I don't know, a lot of climax seems to... Well, I mean, it's the Iron Throne, right? Which is by default in King's Landing, and everyone's vying for it.
But
so it feels like the political end game of A Song of Ice and Fire has to involve King's Landing in some form.
Right. So I don't think I can see why you say that. I don't think you're right, and the reason I don't think you're right is that I think that the political end game and the magical end game are going to end up intertwined in Bran Stark. Right. So I think that the Iron Throne is
no, but it doesn't even if the Iron Throne is gone, Bran has no magical power anywhere outside of the North.
That's not true.
It's absolutely true.
He's
going to walk into Raven and fly down south.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
No, but there's
virtually nowhere weirwoods. Weirwoods, my God, that's a weird one to say.
I mean, there's one at Raventree, at least.
Yeah, there's one. Sure, he's not going to run Seven Kingdoms using the odd weird tree, is he?
No, but he's going to rule from the Isle of Faces in the God's Eye, sitting in a weirwood throne.
Okay, we are just making it all up now again, aren't we?
Yes.
Are you thinking of the right series here?
I'll concede I have no evidence.
What I'll give you is what they essentially attempted. Well, Actually, I'm not going to say that. What I'll give you is that the Bran is indeed going to be the marriage of magic and politics, specifically in the north, right? And that will conspire to help Jon become who he actually is. I don't know how. I mean, Jon's dead as well, which doesn't help.
As you've said, death is a
death is funny, but that's why it's so interesting that there's a lot of magical characters congregating around Jon, and something's going to give.
Okay.
And I feel we can't go without mentioning, Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised, etc., etc., stallion that mounts the world, whatever you want to call it. Based on that sort of terminology, I think Jon is your best bet, but I think Bran is going to be the enabler of that.
Maybe. I think when Jon comes back, if Jon comes back, I think there's a good chance Jon ceases to be a point of view character.
Yeah, we could see it through Bran.
But I think...
Which then is still, as we said before, that doesn't necessarily mean that Jon is the hero.
That's true. That's true.
I think they're intertwined, the two of them, but then we're coming back to the whole family argument.
Maybe it's just a family.
I was going to make the case for Sansa very strongly.
Sansa's so purely political, right? Like Arya is so purely magical-ish. Like neither of them are 100%.
So you combine them, and that's obviously their storyline together. It's all mimicked by the wolves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arya, I think currently at least has less of a case because she's just doing, for lack of a better way of saying it, weird shit. Whereas Sansa, yeah, you're right, she's purely political, but she is involved in every gigantic political swing that happens. I mean, she arguably causes Ned's death. Well, contributes to it.
Yes.
She's there whilst the war breaks out with Robb, which is quite problematic, and it influences a lot of Robb's decisions, and probably a lot of Cersei's as well. She gets Joffrey killed.
Does she?
Yeah, she tells the Queen of Thorns that Joffrey is a heinous piece of shit.
Oh no, yes, so she does that, yes.
I'm not saying that Sansa's doing any of this on purpose, but she is definitely influencing us. And I think the interesting thing about her story is that she starts doing these things on purpose. She's there when her aunt gets killed, more or less.
Yeah.
And again, she's quite obviously making her way back north, where all the heroes are congregating, to march down south. And this is where it'll be really interesting in the books. Does King's Landing, as you say, get blown up well before stuff in the north gets worked out?
I can't work out the timeline.
I mean, winter obviously is coming, but is winter going to come with a lot of death? We don't really know that yet. We don't know what's happening north of the wall. Other than Mance Rayder becomes a shapeshifter and goes off to do his merry thing.
No, we've got no eyes north of the wall. No.
So I think Sansa could well be... Yeah, so Bran gives us eyes, absolutely. But I think more and more I'm believing my own hype now that you might be right that Jon ceases to be a POV character. That might even be true of Sansa and Arya. It might be the entire gang is just seen through Bran's eyes, and the rest of the story unfolds that way.
That would be bizarre.
It would be a Bran versus Dany type thing, The Starks on the side of ice and Dany on the side of fire, if you want to be really reductionist.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, yeah. I feel that neither one of us really has much to say on Dany.
I don't know. I think Dany is so difficult because...
The Mad Queen or the saviour of all of humanity?
Yes. I think Mad Queen Dany, as it's been called, I think is quite heavily implied throughout sort of Dany's early passages.
Yeah, but not necessarily in a sort of this is going to happen. I think she's very quantum mechanical at the moment, isn't she? She could be literally anything.
yeah, she's. I think Dany is. I'm struggling to put it into words. She's sort of a study in the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think if you look at the things that she tries to accomplish, both on the Dothraki Sea and in Slaver's Bay, she's trying to do the right thing. She's trying to end slavery. She tries to protect the Lazarene from Drogo's Khalasar. All of this. She tries to save Viserys from his crown of gold. But at every step, she becomes more villainous, I think. The deal that she strikes with Krasnus to get the Unsullied, for example, she's just a bad faith actor.
Yeah.
There. Now, Krasnus is an idiot, and the Astapori, of course, have it coming because they're slavers who create eunuch slave soldiers. Like, they're terrible people.
Yeah, the people she's up against are demonstrably about as bad as it gets, right?
But that sort of makes her job too easy.
Yeah. I'm fully with you. With you. She could turn out to be the big end game villain of the piece somehow.
Yes.
Or she could be one of the heroes. It really is.
It's so delicately balanced.
Especially because she's very likely a bona fide Targaryen. She more or less has to be. She hatched dragons.
I'm not having any of this. Dany is a fake nonsense. Dany,
no, she's real.
It wouldn't serve any purpose for her to be fake. It would just be boring and irritating.
See, but that is the key point. She has to either, in my mind, therefore be the endgame villain or the endgame hero, because otherwise we have frankly wasted a lot of our time reading all about this shit in Essos. Which, while interesting, is just if it leads to nothing, and this is something that George R. R. Martin will do, because this is the thing with him, right? These are epics that sort of you don't really know how they might end. But I think even he's not cruel enough to make us read all that and then just say, and she dies in the winter or something.
No, I mean she's clearly not going to die of dysentery on the Dothraki Sea.
That would actually be hilarious.
It would be really funny, but it would be
trampled by a Dothraki horde.
It would be really funny, but it wouldn't have enough narrative impact. I don't know.
It's a really tough one, but I think one of the outstanding questions still in my mind is what is ice and what is fire? It's still very unclear.
Yeah. The obvious answer is it's Starks and Targaryens, and that brings us on to the last person on our list. Jon Snow, bastard son of Ned Stark.
Yeah, he's dead.
Dead. Nothing to see here.
Will he revive and take up a sword made of dragon steel, which may or may not be Lightbringer? Who knows? Talk about your Talk about your obvious hero, though, right? I mean,
that's my
of the Song of Ice and Fire.
The problem is I don't want it to be Jon because it's so obvious, but also there's so much metaphor wrapped up in his being. So he is a Targaryen in Winterfell, assuming R plus L equals J is true, which it just
almost certainly
is. It has to be.
Though there are some other theories I've heard.
Yes, and none of them are persuasive. But there are. I know I'll concede that there are. But he's fire in Winterfell. Winterfell has the hot springs None of this is my own creation. I've just read other people's writings on it and absorbed it. But Winterfell has those hot springs running through it, which is sort of like fire running through Winterfell, which is ice, which is a metaphor for Jon being fire inside ice.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
Like there's just loads of stuff like that.
So yes, I guess the conclusion there is that he could be the Song of Ice and Fire because
his could be the Song of Ice and Fire.
Well, you see, what I think an elegant way of doing it, and I guess we'll have to lean a little bit on the TV show here because what happens north of the Wall, the others, in the books is it's impossible to know if that's a big thing. We imagine so. I mean, it's going to be a long winter. Everyone's terrified of the winter that is coming.
Yeah.
So I do suspect there'll be lots of action. So I think the elegant way of solving this is if Dany is, quote unquote, the good hero, the Targaryen that we all want back on the throne. And Jon is as you say, he's the Targaryen Stark, who I think will wage the war against whatever is north of the Wall.
Yeah.
As a Targaryen Stark.
From Dragonback,
and I think he will probably perish as a result. But it'll forge an alliance between the Starks that remain and Dany in some meaningful way. That's probably all way too elegant for.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So
almost like an inversion of what happens in the show.
Yes, I think Jon, because he is a Targaryen and a Stark, will bring those houses together. And I think if you unite those houses, you've got the Seven Kingdoms.
Essentially, yes. Because the Starks carry the North, and probably at this stage the Riverlands and the Vale.
Yeah, because Sansa's there in the Vale doing her thing. The Riverlands are essentially non-existent.
The Riverlands are just a mess.
Arya, presumably, or the Starks are going to just fuck them up. The phrase, that is.
Yeah.
The Westerlands, as you said, after Tywin's death, bit of a shambles, and
just waiting
for Tyrion. Know who's in the Stormlands at the moment? I guess.
Young Griff.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Young Griff has landed and taken the Stormlands.
So that sets up a nice sequel for George R. R. Martin, the Song of Ice and Fire Part 2, another Blackfire Rebellion.
No, Young Griff is not getting out of the series alive.
That's my take on it. I think Jon
I think that's a good take.
It's as you say, it's like what the show tried to do, but they reversed the spin on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried not to lean too heavily on the show, but it sort of is confirmed that Bran ends up on the throne. Like that's one of the things that George Martin told Benioff and Wise. So, like,
it ends up is potentially open to interpretation.
No, of course, I'm paraphrasing as well, but
it's technically he's always sat down, isn't he? So maybe it's a metaphorical throne.
He's just always on the
magic
loo.
And politics. I think Bran does have an important role to play. I don't know. In my mind, I think that was an elegant solution that I came up with on the fly. Of course. I'm going to stick with that from now on.
I think any of Jon, Dany, and Bran really are in with a show. I think there's too much foreshadowing for Dany destroying King's Landing and essentially going bad for it to be her.
Probably. But we've said that King's Landing is virtually irrelevant, isn't it?
It sort of is. It's only relevant because that's where Aegon landed.
It is.
And if whatever happens next marks a new chapter in the history of Westeros, King's Landing ceases to have that much relevance.
Bran might end up on the throne of the North, and Dany on the throne in the South. Or we have Seven Kingdoms again. It's really Hopefully,
you thought that at some point they'd have just renamed it.
That line from Robert was about Seven Kings. It's like, well, Don't make them kings then.
Just have 7 regions.
Exactly, seven counties. I'll do.
Shrink them down to size. No, I think sadly, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think the best take from this episode was that the heroes are the Stark family as a collective, rather than any one person. And
I fully agree, because it's the best thing that anyone said this episode.
I'd like you to know that I feel physically ill.
I can actually tell.
At having said
it
that,
just makes it that much greater.
Oh, get out!
Very soon, very soon. I mean, we have rambled on.
There's a lot to talk about.
Over an hour and 10 minutes. I do hope you've enjoyed listening to us. But as you say, there is a lot to talk about. It's a big saga.
We'll need to come back to this. I think
maybe,
not necessarily
we'll do a hot
this.
take on why Dany is not the Mad Queen.
I'd listen to that. That would be interesting.
You would have to, because I don't see you making the case for it. But anyway, on that potential teaser, I think it just remains for us to say thanks for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. As you know by now, there's no doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. Feel free to let us know, rate the podcast, and leave us a comment, or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, or tweet us at zeroexpertise. We now also have a website where you can reach us, and that's expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes, as we did at the start of this one. If you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Now, in our next episode, we're going back to the Dresden Files to try and get to the bottom of immortality, what it is and how it works. So get ready for more nonsense.